My name is Emery and I am 31 years old. Looking back, I have experienced some of the best and most painful times in my life. Now, I have finally found my inner peace and am ready to share my story with you. This story is about love, betrayal, and renewal, and I hope it can give you some insight. It all started the summer Kathy and I met. We were both 16 years old, young, and full of hope for the future. We met at a school picnic and quickly fell in love. With her long dark hair and bright eyes, Kathy's sunny smile lit up my world. We were almost inseparable, exploring the world together and sharing each other's dreams. Our love was full of youthful enthusiasm and innocence, as if nothing could separate us. As time went by, our relationship grew stronger and stronger. Even though we were young, we both believed that we were the one for each other. One romantic evening, I asked Kathy to marry me, and she said yes without hesitation. We decided to get married and start our life together with great expectations for the future. Our wedding was simple and cozy, and we were overwhelmed by the blessings of our friends and family. We started planning our future, dreaming of having our own house and children. At that time, we were convinced that our love would stand the test of time and remain unchanged. However, I can't help but feel a tinge of bitterness in retrospect. At that time, we were too young and had too many fantasies about life and love. We didn't realize that the real test was still ahead. We didn't realize that one day, betrayal would sneak up on us and tear our love and life apart. But at that time, we were still in the sweetness of love and full of expectations for the future. We held each other's hands and believed that we could face any challenge with each other. That's how we embarked on the journey of marriage and started our new life. After marriage, the focus of life changed. I realized that as a husband, it was my responsibility to provide a stable income for the family. Although I had always dreamed of completing my studies, the pressure of reality forced me to make a difficult decision. I gave up my studies and devoted myself to work. At the beginning, I worked in a fast food restaurant. Every day, I had to face different customers and work between the kitchen and the front desk. Although the work was hard, seeing Kathy's happy smile made it all worthwhile. We started to save money and planned to buy a house and start our own family. But as time went by, my deepest regrets about not completing my studies grew stronger and stronger. Kathy seemed to sense my anxiety and encouraged me to go back to school and fulfill my dream. Kathy seemed to sense my anxiety and encouraged me to go back to school and fulfill my dream. I still remember the night we discussed this issue. We sat on the couch with hot tea in our hands and talked late into the night, Kathy patiently listening to my inner conflicts and analyzing the pros and cons. In the end, we came to an agreement. I could finish my studies in my spare time, and she would support me financially. The decision to go back to school was not easy. It meant finding a balance between work and study, and the rhythm of my life would be completely disrupted. But Kathy was always there for me, giving me encouragement and support. She helped me adjust my schedule to make sure I had enough time to study. Whenever I felt tired and frustrated, she would always give me a warm word of encouragement. Thus, I began a life of parallel work and study. During the day, I was busy at a fast food restaurant, and at night and on weekends, I was buried in books. It was hard work, but every time I made a little progress and saw the proud look in Kathy's eyes, I felt it was all worth it. We planned our future together and envisioned a better life after I finished school. We were so in love and so supportive of each other. I never thought that there would be cracks in our relationship, let alone that one day, betrayal would creep in. But at that time, I was full of hope and worked hard for our future. Shortly after I returned to school, we reached another major turning point in our lives. Kathy was pregnant, and we were about to become parents. When we found out the news, we were filled with joy and gratitude. We looked forward to the baby's arrival and began to prepare for the new life. The birth of our son Max brought us great happiness. When I held his soft body for the first time, I felt more responsibility and love than ever before. I vowed to be a good father and provide Max with the best life possible. But at the same time, I also felt a heavy pressure on my shoulders. Having a child has completely disrupted the rhythm of our lives, with Max needing 24-hour care and me struggling to balance work and school. I started to work at night because it freed up time during the day to watch Max and study. Every night, when Kathy and Max were asleep, I could start working. The fatigue often left me feeling physically and mentally exhausted. But every time I think about how I'm doing this to give my family a better life, I'm reinvigorated. I remember one time when Max suddenly developed a high fever, and I had to take time off work to take care of him. I had a very important test that day, and I was in a hurry to study for it while I was trying to get Max to sleep. When Max's fever finally went down and he fell asleep, I had time to prepare for the test. The next day, I went to the exam with two big dark circles under my eyes. But it was all worth it when I realized that I was doing it for my family. Kathy is also working hard for her family. After her maternity leave, she found a job as a nurse's aide at the hospital. She works during the day and comes home at night to take care of Max, and we are like two tired warriors, supporting each other in the endless battle for the future of our family. It was a hard time, but I look back on it with warmth and emotion. We were a simple but happy family of three. We witnessed Max's first head lift, first rollover, first crawl. Every little progress made us happy. We are looking forward to seeing Max grow up, and we are looking forward to seeing him grow up healthy and happy. We were so united, so supportive of each other. We believed that as long as we were together, there was no difficulty that could not be overcome. I never thought that there would be a crack in our relationship, let alone that one day, betrayal would creep in. But at that time, we were full of hope and worked hard for our little family. As time went on, my studies and work became more and more demanding. I had to work late at fast food restaurants while trying to keep up with my school schedule. I was often exhausted, but I had to keep going. This had a negative impact on my relationship with Kathy. Kathy began to complain frequently about my neglect. She said I was always using work and school as an excuse to neglect my family. She accused me of missing Max's important moments and our anniversaries. Every time I try to explain, she gets angrier and even slams the door. I could feel her resentment building up, but there was nothing I could do to change it. Gradually, Kathy began to eat dinner out more often, saying she was having dinner with a coworker. At first I didn't care, but then I realized that she was mentioning a male colleague's name more and more often. She started mentioning interesting things about him and praising him. I began to feel uneasy, but every time I tried to ask, Kathy would gloss over it. Once, I overlooked Kathy's cell phone and saw a message on the screen from a male colleague. Although the content was ordinary, I saw the smile on Kathy's face. It was a heartfelt smile that I hadn't seen in a long time. I felt an ache in my heart and realized that Kathy had found something in that man that she couldn't get from me. I started to get paranoid and checked Kathy's cell phone a lot. I realized that her chats with that man were getting more and more frequent, and the content was getting more and more ambiguous. Though it hadn't gone beyond the bottom line, I could sense that their feelings for each other were growing. I tried to communicate with Kathy, but every time it ended in an argument. Kathy accused me of not trusting her, while I couldn't control my jealousy and anxiety. Finally, one rainy night, it all came to a climax. I was late getting home that day because of a delayed project. When I opened the door, I saw Kathy sitting alone in the dark living room. Her eyes were red and swollen, and she had obviously been crying. I could sense that she had something to say. That night, Kathy confessed her frustration with me. She said she felt neglected by me and that our marriage had become a burden. She told me that she was tired of fighting every day and of feeling alone. Then she told me that she had developed feelings for the male coworker. She said that although she hadn't crossed the line, she enjoyed being with him. She felt understood and valued, something she hadn't felt with me for a long time. When I heard that, I felt like the sky was spinning. I couldn't believe that we had loved each other so much, and yet it had come to this. I felt angry and sad, but there was nothing I could do about it. I asked Kathy if she still loved me, and after a long silence, Kathy said she wasn't sure anymore. She said she didn't know if there was a future for our marriage. That night, neither of us could sleep. I asked myself over and over again, when did our relationship start to deteriorate? What had I done wrong? I began to remember the signs, Kathy's detachment, her indifference, her devotion to that man. I ignored it all until it was too late. This night of confession was a devastating blow to me. It marked a turning point in my relationship with Kathy. From that point on, the trust and affection between us began to plummet. I began to question our marriage and our future. I didn't know if we could ever go back to the way things were, and I wasn't even sure if we still loved each other. The pain was killing me, affecting my work and schooling, and I became more reticent and distant from Kathy. I became more reticent and distant from Kathy, and we were stuck in a vicious circle where marriage became a torture. I began to wonder if we had made the right decision. Were we too young and naive to know how to run a relationship? But I still have a glimmer of hope. I hoped that we would be able to save the marriage and find our love again. I began to try to communicate with Kathy, hoping that we could work things out together, but every attempt seemed to drive us farther and farther apart. With Kathy's dissatisfaction with me growing and her feelings for the man deepening. I began to feel desperate and helpless. I didn't know how far our marriage could go, and I didn't know what the future held for us. This experience made me realize the fragility of marriage for the first time. I began to think about what love and marriage really are. Do they stand the test of time and reality? I began to doubt whether our original vow was just a beautiful fantasy. After that rainy night of confession, my world came crashing down, and Kathy's betrayal of me and her feelings for another man were like sharp edges to my heart. I felt angry, sad, and helpless. I kept asking myself, how did our marriage come to this? Where were our vows, our love? I began to have frequent nightmares of Kathy with that man, and I could only watch helplessly. I became bitter and angry. I couldn't face Kathy. I couldn't face the family. Every morning when I woke up and saw Kathy beside me, I felt a sense of despair. I knew that our marriage had come to an end. I began to think about divorce. At first, the idea terrified me. I didn't know what my life would be like after the divorce or how Max would be affected. But every time I thought about Kathy's betrayal and her feelings for that man, I became more determined to get a divorce. I couldn't stand the thought of my wife falling in love with another man. I couldn't stand this kind of marriage. I contacted our family friend and my lawyer, Mr. Holmes, and told him about my decision and asked for his help. Mr. Holmes, a wise old man, listened patiently to my story. He advised me to calm down and think it over. He said that divorce is a big decision that will affect us for the rest of our lives. He suggested that I talk to Kathy first to see if there was any chance of recovery. But my mind was made up. I told Mr. Holmes that I could not forgive Kathy for her betrayal and that I could not continue in this marriage. I asked him to start divorce proceedings immediately, and I wanted to end the marriage as soon as possible. Mr. Holmes sighed and said he understood how I felt. He promised to prepare the divorce papers as soon as possible, but again, he advised me to think about it. I didn't hesitate. I knew that this was my only option. I couldn't imagine continuing to live with a woman who had betrayed me, and I couldn't imagine having to deal with her feelings for someone else every day. I would rather suffer the pain of a divorce than stay in a marriage like this. With the help of Mr. Holmes, I started to prepare for the divorce proceedings. We needed to divide our assets and decide on the custody of Max. These were issues we hadn't even thought about, but now we had to face them. Kathy and I started negotiating the division of property. Our house, our cars, our savings, all needed to be divided. The process was full of arguments and tears, and every negotiation was like a war. Kathy wanted more property, while I insisted on a fair division. We both fought for our own interests and seemed to forget that we were once lovers. Custody of Max is also a difficult issue. Kathy and I both loved Max and did not want to lose him. We both felt that we were better parents and wanted custody of Max. We had heated arguments and even accused each other of not being good parents. These fights have caused me a lot of pain. We used to be the closest of partners, but now we are hurting each other over child custody. Although it was a painful process, we finally came to an agreement. We decided to split our assets equally and take turns raising Max. The result was far from perfect, but at least we didn't have to fight about it anymore. The divorce proceedings were continuing, but I knew that the hardest part was over. My marriage to Kathy had come to an end. The love we had, the vows we had made, were all in the past. As Mr. Holmes and I were preparing for divorce proceedings, another blow came when Kathy's scandal at the hospital came to light. It turned out that her lover at the hospital was none other than her colleague Wilson. When I heard the news from Mr. Holmes, I felt sick to my stomach. I knew Wilson. He was a colleague of Kathy's and we had dinner together a few times. It never occurred to me that he could be Kathy's lover. This news made me feel even more angry and sad about Kathy's betrayal. According to Mr. Holmes, it was other colleagues at the hospital who reported Kathy's relationship with Wilson to management. They had long been aware of the affair, but had no proof. Until one day, a coworker overheard Kathy and Wilson kissing in a hospital locker room. The coworker took pictures and reported the incident to management. While management was investigating Kathy and Wilson, Mr. Holmes was serving divorce papers at the hospital. Kathy was humiliated and shocked when she was publicly served with divorce papers in front of all her coworkers. She had no idea that she would face such embarrassment in the workplace. Kathy tried to explain, tried to deny her relationship with Wilson, but the evidence was too strong for her to deny it. The hospital management was very upset and felt that Kathy's and Wilson's behavior had seriously affected the hospital's reputation. After ineffective warnings, they decided to fire Kathy and Wilson. When I heard that Kathy had been fired, I felt no sympathy. As far as I was concerned, she deserved it. She had betrayed our marriage and now she had lost her job, and she had done it to herself. Kathy's scandal, which accelerated our divorce. Divorce proceedings are still ongoing, but Kathy's life seems to have completely fallen apart. Not only had she lost her job and her reputation, she had also lost her moral support. From what I hear, Kathy has become almost incapable of taking care of herself in the wake of the divorce and the scandal. I heard from mutual friends that Kathy was in tears and had no desire to take care of herself. She began to drink heavily and was often found drunk in the house. She became extremely unstable, crying hysterically and then falling into long silences. Her house was a mess, full of bottles and garbage. Eventually, the situation became so bad that Kathy's parents had to intervene. They moved in to take care of Kathy and try to help her out. But Kathy seemed to have lost the will to live and was indifferent to her parents' help. One day, I got a call from Kathy's father. He wanted to talk to me and wanted me to give Kathy some support. I could hear the pain and helplessness in his voice. As a father, it must have been very difficult for him to watch his daughter fall into such a situation. But to be honest, I don't have much sympathy for Kathy. As far as I was concerned, she was to blame. She betrayed our marriage. She destroyed our family. What she's going through now is just punishment for her infidelity. I remembered the last time we met. Kathy looked haggard, with despair in her eyes. She tried to talk to me, tried to beg my forgiveness, but I ignored her. In my mind, she was already dead. I politely declined Kathy's father's request. I told him that I had nothing to do with Kathy anymore. Her life, her future, was none of my business. I needed to focus on myself and Max, and I couldn't be bothered with Kathy's problems. Kathy's father sighed and said he understood my decision. He said he would do everything he could to help Kathy, but he also knew that ultimately it would be Kathy's own effort. No one could come out of this darkness for her. She had to find the courage and strength to live on her own. This phone call reaffirmed that I had made the right decision. Divorce is my only choice. I couldn't, and wouldn't, stay with a woman who betrayed me. I needed a new start, a future without Kathy. Although I was indifferent to what happened to Kathy, I am not a cold person. Deep down, I still hope she can get out of her predicament and start a new life. But it will take some effort on her part, and she will have to pay the price for her betrayal. The divorce proceedings were in their final stages, but the war between Kathy and I wasn't over. We started fighting for custody of Max. It was a fierce battle, and neither side was willing to budge on the issue. Kathy's attorneys tried to portray her as a loving mother. They presented numerous photographs and videos showing how Kathy had cared for Max. They brought in Kathy's friends and neighbors to testify about what a good mother Kathy was, and Kathy cried in court, saying that Max was the most important part of her life and that she couldn't live without him. But my attorney, Mr. Holmes, wasn't buying it. He emphasized Kathy's mental problems and argued that she was unfit to care for Max alone, and he presented Kathy's letter of dismissal from the hospital as proof that her behavior had interfered with her work. He even brought in former co-workers of Kathy's to testify, all of whom spoke of Kathy's emotional instability and irresponsibility. Mr. Holmes also elaborates on Kathy's infidelity, which he believes has seriously affected Max's upbringing. He questioned how Kathy could provide Max with a stable home environment when she could not even be faithful in her marriage. In court, Kathy lost her temper on several occasions. Once, when Mr. Holmes mentioned her infidelity, she suddenly stood up and shouted that I did not know how to love her. The bailiff had to stop her. On another occasion, she cried so loudly in court that she almost fainted. All these cases were used by Mr. Holmes to prove that Kathy was mentally unstable. Throughout the trial, I just sat there and watched it all happen. I watched as the woman I once loved was now in court fighting for custody of her son. I felt a bitterness in my heart. How did our marriage, our family, come to this? But whenever I tried to go soft, Kathy's betrayal would come to mind. I would think of her with Wilson, of her indifference and detachment from me. These memories renewed my resolve. I couldn't let a woman who betrayed her marriage get sole custody of Max, and I couldn't let Max grow up in an unstable environment. Eventually, the judge made a decision. Taking into account the circumstances of both parties, the judge decided to grant Kathy and me joint custody. However, the judge also required that Kathy continue to receive psychotherapy and that her time with Max be supervised by a third party. When the judge read the verdict, Kathy broke down again. She sat on the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. Her parents had to come forward to help her. I, on the other hand, just sat there quietly and watched. I knew that this sentence was the best possible outcome for me. As I left the courtroom, I felt a sense of relief. This difficult divorce battle was finally over. Although the outcome wasn't perfect, at least I got partial custody of Max. I knew that this was crucial for Max's development and for our father-son relationship. After the dust of my divorce settled, I started a new life. I moved into a new apartment and began to readjust to my role as a single father. Max and I met every 2 weeks, and I did my best to provide him with a stable and loving environment. It wasn't easy in the beginning. Often in the dead of night, I would think of Kathy and the good times we had. These memories stuck in my throat and made it difficult for me to sleep. I also often wondered if I could really raise Max on my own. But life is full of surprises. When I was at my lowest point, I met Mia. It was a sunny weekend when I took Max to the park. Max fell down while playing in the sand, and while I was busy trying to comfort him, Mia appeared. She gently treated Max's wound, and her words soon made Max stop crying. I was so grateful to Mia. We got to talking, and I was surprised to find that we had a lot in common. Mia is a single mom with a daughter about the same age as Max. We talked about life, about the difficulties of parenting, about our pasts. I realized that with Mia, I could open up without reservation. Since then, Mia and I have been seeing a lot of each other. We took the kids to the park together, discussed recipes and educational topics. I no longer have to pretend to be strong in front of Mia because she always understands what I'm going through. She always gave me the support and encouragement I needed with her wisdom and compassion. Gradually, I realized that I had developed feelings for Mia. It was different from my love for Kathy. It was more mature and tougher. It was based on shared experiences and mutual understanding. I began to look forward to every meeting with Mia and began to picture our future in my mind. But I'm also cautious. My heart had been deeply hurt by Kathy's betrayal. I wasn't sure I was ready for another relationship. I was afraid of getting hurt again, of losing again. It was Mia's honesty that allayed my fears. One evening, while we were walking together, Mia took the initiative to talk about her past. She told me that she too had been through a painful marriage and that her ex-husband had been violent towards her. She talked about her pain, how she regained her self-confidence, and how she learned to believe in love again. Mia's story touched me. I realized that we are all warriors in life. We've all been hurt, but we haven't given up on the pursuit of love. At that moment, I made up my mind to give myself a new chance and to embrace the future with courage. I confessed my feelings to Mia. To my surprise, Mia told me that she felt the same way about me. We kissed in the night, and I felt a sense of peace and happiness that I had never felt before. I knew that I had found my place, my soulmate. Since then, Mia and I have started our new life together. We have made new memories together and faced life's challenges together. We have watched our children grow up and fought for our family together. With Mia's love, I have found a new meaning in life. Kathy's betrayal once made me lose faith in love, but Mia's appearance made me believe in the power of love again. She made me realize that true love is not possession and control, but support and understanding. She taught me how to love and how to be loved. As my relationship with Mia stabilized, we began to plan for our future. We talked about getting married and starting a new family. We even started looking for a new house, a place that could accommodate both our families. Life seemed to be full of hope and possibilities again. That's when Kathy reappeared in my life. She contacted me through a mutual friend and said she wanted to talk to me. At first, I was hesitant. I wasn't sure I was ready to face her. But with Mia's encouragement, I agreed. We met in a quiet cafe, and Kathy looked much different, not the confident woman I knew. She looked tired and fragile, with remorse in her eyes. Kathy apologized to me for what she had done in the past. She told me that she had realized her mistakes and that she had deeply regretted betraying our marriage. She said she still loved me and asked me to give her a chance to start over. I listened quietly, my heart mixed. Part of me was touched by Kathy's words, and the part of me that once loved her dearly seemed to still be somewhere in my heart. But another part of me couldn't forget the hurt she had caused me. The feeling of being betrayed and cheated still haunts me like a ghost. I told Kathy that I had forgiven her, but I couldn't go back. Our marriage, our love, was history. I have a new life now, a new lover. I couldn't and wouldn't give it all up. Kathy cried and pleaded with me to give her another chance. But I knew I had to be firm. Going back to the past meant betraying what I had now. It meant betraying Mia, betraying myself. I couldn't do that. I told Kathy that we all need to move on. We've all made mistakes. We've all been hurt. But life must go on. I hope she finds her own happiness, like I found Mia. But that happiness, it won't be about me anymore. Kathy finally accepted this reality. We hugged and said goodbye. This time, it was a real goodbye. I knew that we would never see each other again, and that Kathy would always be a chapter in my life, a memory. But that chapter had ended, and a new one had begun. I came back to Mia, to our life. We continued our plans, our dreams. We traveled together, explored the world together. We watched our children grow up and work together for their future. In Mia's love, I found true peace and happiness. Looking back, I've been through a lot. From a naive boy to a man with a lot of experience. I have experienced the sweetness of love and the pain of betrayal. I lost a marriage, but also found true love. This is my story, a story of love, betrayal, forgiveness, and renewal. I share this story in the hope that those who have been hurt like me will find a little comfort in it. I want to tell them that no matter how hard life is, there is always hope ahead. As long as we face the past bravely and embrace the future openly, we can find our own happiness. Life is never easy. It has its peaks and valleys. It has laughter and tears. But it is these ups and downs that make our life. They teach us to grow, teach us to love, and teach us how to face loss. So let's learn to appreciate every moment of our lives, good and bad. For it is these moments that shape who we are today. And our future is in our own hands. As long as we never give up on love, never give up on hope, we can make miracles happen. Now, I'm going to start a new chapter in our lives, hand in hand with Mia. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know that with love as our companion, we have nothing to fear. Because love is the most powerful force. It can heal the pain and overcome everything. This is my story, the story of an ordinary person. But I hope that it can bring you a touch of inspiration, a touch of realization. Because in this world, no one's life is smooth sailing. We all stumble in our own journey, but as long as we have hope, as long as we have the courage to love, we can find the way to happiness. May my story be a light in your darkness. May you find courage and strength in love. And may you one day, like me, find your own happiness and hope. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's story. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you have a story to share about your own or someone else's experience, please feel free to contact me. Take care.